Welcome, Romies. What's up, y'all? It's Mike Rudd, and in this experience, we are going to channel our inner Tim Allens and do a little pure Michigan. Did you know that the least visited national park in the United States in the lower 48 is actually in Michigan? And it is an island, the largest island, in fact, on Lake Superior. I had no idea about this for really my entire childhood living the state right below it. I was so fortunate, though, to get to go visit Isle Royale National Park. And I'll admit, I'll be the first to say it. I didn't quite understand what this park was all about. Even reading it that, located on the largest freshwater lake in the entire world. Or reading about how backpackers traverse across the island for several days, or how you can visit Rolf and his wife. This couple have been studying the moose and wolf populations on the island for several decades, and they've been living on Isle Royale from May through October since the 1970s. But until I actually went to Isle Royale National Park, I didn't still quite get it. So this national park is so less visited than other national parks. Get this. Yellowstone National Park receives more visitors in one day than Isle Royale receives an entire year. How do you get there? How do you go visit? How do you go explore this place? Well, my dad and I took a road trip all the way up the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, all the way to Copper Harbor, which Copper Harbor, Michigan, is about a 12-hour drive from Columbus, Ohio. We're talking the tip of the UP. And then from there, we stayed in one of their couple of lodging opportunities. And fortunately, we got tickets to the ferry, and the ferry went that day to Isle Royale. The week before we came to Copper Harbor, Michigan, the ferry wasn't running because the waves were so big. So it was a 3-hour plus ferry ride on Lake Superior to get to the dock and the headquarters. Now, I don't get seasick. I was sucking on my ginger pills, meditating on the back of the boat, hoping I didn't throw up over the side of the boat. And I was one of the fortunate ones. I'd say 50% of the boat got seasick that day. Ship captain did say that we had especially big waves that day, but it was the rockiest boat ride I have ever taken in my entire life. So that's how you get there. There's a couple other options. You can come from Canada or you can come from Minnesota, all by ferry, unless you have the luxury of taking a private boat or a float plane airplane ride. But once you get there, you have two options. You could stay, if you reserve far enough ahead, which I believe we reserved about a year in advance, a small cabin on Isle Royale National Park, operated by the National Park Service. You can also, of course, backpack. This was unbelievable. The average visitor is there for 3.5 days on this 49-mile long and 9-mile wide island. You are isolated and you are in the wilderness. It was, for me, this gasp of, I just can't believe how big and beautiful this planet is until you get to go see some of these places. So 99% of Isle Royale National Park is wilderness. There's no cell service. There is some subpar Wi-Fi at the visitor center for an emergency text message. The hiking is great. There's 65 miles of hiking trails within the park. I did about 28 of them, I think. My favorite hike was the Stoll Trail out to Scoville Point. My second favorite one was up the Mount Aubigeois Fire Tower and onto Mount Franklin, which was named after Benjamin Franklin. And then my third one was the Greenstone Ridge Trail to Tobin Harbor. It was just unbelievable. The northern lights came out the second night we were there. I missed it. They weren't expected. I went out the next night at about 2:30 in the morning. Saw a couple brief flashes of them forming, but they never really came out. I've seen them once in Iceland, so I kind of knew what I was looking for. But even sitting on the dock with the waves coming in and out at 2:30 in the morning on this enchanted island, while not seeing the northern lights, it was still an experience I will never forget. The wildlife, we had a bull moose with a 4-foot antler wingspan that came by every single morning on his walk by our cabin. You could hear the wolves howling at night. There was amazing birds. There were caterpillars. The plants were unbelievable. And then there's a little bit of fun you can have. We rented canoes. You can rent canoes or kayaks. You can take a nature walk. My dad actually went and on a Ranger Dave excursion to go meet Rolf and his wife, the two that have been studying the moose and the wolves for all these years. I met an artist in residence there named Nate and his partner Michelle, who was the artist in residence there in 2016. Nate gave this really neat presentation on his art. I had met them on a hiking trail, and he told me he was doing it later that night, so I came. And the mushrooms. The mushrooms were unbelievable. I saw purple, red, yellow, brown, and orange mushrooms on this trip. So they don't call it pure Michigan for anything. The sunrises and the sunsets, the water, the isolation. This is a special place, friends. It is very hard to come to, not just because of the bumpy ferry ride, the hard location up on Lake Superior. Your limited visiting window is basically June through September. Lodging fills up. If you're not at Copper Harbor or the Wendigo Station, you have to boil water. And one other fun fact, no bears live on the island, which is a bit of a surprise for being on the Michigan and Canadian border. I think that's it, though. If you're planning a trip to the Upper Peninsula of Michigan or just to pure Michigan in general, don't sleep on the idea that you plan a couple extra days and extend your trip and go visit Isle Royale National Park. Thanks for roaming with me, friends. If you have any questions about this experience, I'm happy to talk more. I'm enthusiastic about it, visiting that and all the U.S. national parks. Till next time, Mike Rudd here. Keep roaming, friends.